Hi there, my name is Allison Wesley, and today we're going to work with a practice that helps us feel better in our hips, our lower backs. We will do this in one part standing, and in the other part we're going to be laying on our backs, which you could do either on the floor, or my thought is this could become a practice you do laying in bed, before you go to bed, or when you wake up in the morning. So our main focus in this series is going to be to differentiate the movement of your leg from your torso. So we're going to start with really simple exercise. You can bend your knees a little bit and bring your hands onto your pelvis. And as you bend your knees, see that we're staying a little bit relaxed through the back of the seat muscles. So we're not in a tucked position bending the knees. It's like you're letting your hips just kind of rest on top of your ankles. Okay, so then you can shift the weight over onto one foot and come onto the ball of the opposite foot. And for right now, just turn the leg in and out. And we'll just kind of explore. How does that feel? Where do I feel the movement? Pretty easy. Let's switch sides so you can shift the other foot. Come onto the ball of the foot and rotate in and out. Now, there are all sorts of ways to do this. So I could be moving from all different places depending on what I'm looking for. And for our purposes today, we're going to see if we can do that movement again. So shift to the first side and see if you can move the leg from the leg, not from your pelvis. So of course there are intrinsic movements that are happening, but we're going to imagine that the pelvis is not moving much, and rather the leg is spinning and turning out and turning in. Now, if I were teaching you in a class, I would be able to look around and see, oh, yep, you're doing great, you've got it, yep, you might have a question. So how are you able to find this out at home and figure out, am I actually doing this? Okay. There's one way, and you can actually kind of overdo the wrong way and see if that feels like the way you've been practicing it, right? So you might, on one round or two, let your pelvis turn your leg. So you can see this way I'm actually moving my bottom leg a little bit more. My torso is turning with the leg. Everything's swiveling. And now that I've had that experience, I can switch it up to coming back to just leg, turning from leg. Okay, we're going to switch sides and take a little rest on that first side. Swivel. We're aiming for turning leg from leg. Not much movement through pelvis. Of course, you might compare that to, what if I let my whole body turn my leg? And when it comes to back pain, this is something we find pretty commonly, that those of us who have kind of chronic low back pain, that we tend to move our leg really from our back. We kind of have lost that strong function of being able to turn just the leg. So come back to that and see if after you've had that experience, what is it like to actually not move your torso and to not move your pelvis and just swivel leg. And release and rest, and don't worry, we're going to do it a whole bunch more. Right? So I'm going to give you a few more ways to just make sure that we're getting kind of as precise with this as possible. The other way, of course, you can set up a mirror and watch yourself in the mirror and see if you look and you notice that your whole body is turning. Sometimes if you actually visually see yourself, you can make the movement a little bit more specific. The other piece that you can touch is the center of your belly. So maybe you find your navel, maybe you touch onto the center of the belly. We're going to shift to that first side. And imagine that this point is going to stay relatively forward. So my image is like my navel is sort of staying in this plane. It's kind of shining forward. Right? If you're very awake to subtle sensation, you might also be able to feel that, in fact, there is some movement, but it's all counter movement that's working together. So you might be able to feel, okay, if my leg turns out, my navel turns actually a little bit away from my leg. And if my leg turns in, my navel turns just a little bit toward the leg. That's subtle. It doesn't become this. So if you're actually doing it, skip that image and just think navel forward. Okay, let's switch sides. So we're thinking maybe navel just sort of like shining forward, like it's a beam of light that's shining straight ahead. And for those of you who are feeling, really subtle sensation, you might be able to feel, actually, it's kind of countering what the leg is doing. It feels like my navel is turning away from my leg a little and then turning toward my leg a little. We get better at feeling that the more we practice feeling it. So if this is your first time doing something like this, that's okay. You can stay with that image of navel forward. That's just to help keep us feeling like our leg is being moved from our leg. Let's go ahead and release from there. Notice how your hips feel. Chances are you're a little more awake through the muscles that move your leg. Should we do one more? Let's do one more. Okay, so this is going to be really simple. This is just the same thing, but you're going to breathe the whole time. So you can bring hands wherever. Hips, navel, if that helped you. If you want like kind of a big, dramatic, lifted shape, you're welcome to lift your arms. But let's see if we can do this with breath. So we're going to shift to the starting position. All of those things are happening, right? So our hips are very much kind of over our heel versus forward. Okay, so that's kind of step one. Step two, we're moving our leg from our leg. You might be able to feel that means navel, pelvis, relatively in the same position. So let's add the breath. Let's turn out on the breath in. And let's turn in on the breath out. So you turn out on breath in. And turn in on the breath out. Of course, the yogis say that if you're able to have free, easy breath in a movement, then the alignment is pretty good, right? Energy is able to flow, breath is able to move. And one of the easiest, simplest things to remember, can I breathe? Then I'm probably moving pretty well. Okay, let's switch sides. Last time, we'll take 4 more on that second side. And you can breathe in to turn out. And breathe out to turn in. Two more times. And this last round, we're breathing. Maybe that breath also informs you of being able to relax your shoulders and your jaw and your face. Okay, come back to center. So that should feel just like a nice little energy lifter to the muscles that help with your hips. It's also going to come in handy for the next series we'll come to, which is laying on our backs. So to transition, again, you could do this in a bed if you prefer. A couch won't be big enough, but a bed would be fine, floor would be fine. So I'm going to come down onto my back and make sure I can see you and you can see me. So from here, you're going to rest with your knees bent and your feet on the ground or on the bed. And the first piece we're going to do, and this is a nice kind of wake-up thing for first thing in the morning as well, you're just going to take a hold of one thigh, and with your fingers, we're not going to push very hard, but you can keep your fingers a bit splayed into the back of your hamstrings. And imagine as you gently extend, and it doesn't have to be your full maximum, straightening of your leg, just a little extension, that your fingers are almost kind of trying to slide apart, almost like you're trying to fluff cotton of the back of the leg. So we're going to do that on inhale. And on exhale, you can bend. We'll do this several times, and each time you might find a different location for your hands. And exhale to bend. Really simple. I'm going to slide my hands around. So I'm not pushing very hard with my fingers. I'm just giving the slightest kind of spreading out. Now you could do way more of these first thing in the morning. I do want to point out, if when you extend your leg, if this creates like abdominal tension and your pelvis is tucked and your belly is turned on and your chest is pulled forward, see if you can relax the motion a little bit. See if you can focus it really on your leg moving instead of your leg moving your back. Right? So it's like just your leg straightening, bending, even if it doesn't straighten all the way. Okay, so next piece is the famous figure 4. So flex your foot. That's just so we can stay a little conscious of being even in the outside and the inside of the ankle. We're then going to cross the ankle over onto the opposite thigh. And I'm going to give you all sorts of variations for this. Okay, so you do the one where you feel you're getting a stretch or a very doable, possible releasing sensation to the outer leg, maybe your hamstring. So this is step 1. Now here's the subtlety. I'm going to think to myself, my right leg, which is on top, I'm going to think my right thigh forward without letting my pelvis spin like a record underneath me. So if I'm going to use my hand to guide my thigh forward, I'm going to try not to let my whole pelvis turn. I'm going to try to keep my hip points relatively where they are, so I'm turning my leg from my leg. This is option 1. Option 2 is bringing your bottom foot onto something. So if you're in a bed, pillow, right? If you're in a yoga studio, maybe a yoga block. Next variation would be your hands looping through. So I'm going to show you this from the back. Right. With my right leg on top, I would take my hands and go inside. My right hand is going to the inside to take a hold of my left thigh. And then I can use my arms to bring that bottom leg toward me. So you're just looking for the point where you feel like, yep, I can be here. This is a level of stretch I can breathe through. I can relax my shoulders. You can relax your bottom foot. I love the idea or the image of having a lung in your right hip. Like, can you breathe into the lung of your right hip? Okay, so that's pretty good. You can release when you're ready. And compare the two sides. So probably already they feel different from each other, but if you also straighten your legs out and relax, you might notice the side you stretched is a bit more dropped. Maybe it's a bit more turned out. It's a bit more relaxed. All right, let's do the same thing to the opposite side. So you can bring your other foot onto the bed or onto the floor. Take a hold of the back of the opposite thigh. So I'm not going to interlace my fingers. I'm going to keep them separate so I can just kind of give this little spreading out as I extend. And then you can bend. And with the breath, so inhale to extend. And exhale to bend. And each time you might find a new spot to give that little widening. Again, we're looking for a range of motion where it's really enjoyable. If this makes you feel like you're really clenching or working, if your head is lifted, if you're straining, you're just doing too much and it's not going to help you relax or stretch the hamstrings. Right? So we're trying to give this really gentle widening and lengthening to the hamstrings. And we're all put together so differently. I've got pretty short arms and a long torso, so you might find that you can hold way more than I can, or you might find that your hands aren't really coming close to the backs of the thighs. Right? Part of that's just your proportion. So if you're finding that, you can do something similar to wherever you can reach. So that might be your kind of the outside and the inside. That's fine too. Okay? But the next time you come up, we're going to flex the foot and then cross the ankle over for figure 4. And we check in that we can breathe, our shoulders can relax. Phase 1 is letting the thigh come a bit forward without letting your pelvis spin. And again, if you're not sure if it's happening, you can always let it happen once and notice what happens if your whole pelvis and your whole back turn, and see if you can instead let just your thigh move in space, your navel stays facing the ceiling, kind of pointing straight up. Right? You might stay here, you might prop your foot up onto something, a block or a pillow, or you might loop your hands through and draw your right thigh in toward you. Okay. And then breathe into the lung of your left hip. What a nice concept, what a nice image. And of course, with time, everything else can relax a little bit. As you breathe into your left hip, you might notice your shoulders can quiet, your jaw can relax, your eyes might close. With any of these, you're welcome to stay a bit longer, but when you're ready, you can unwind and rest. Maybe you straighten your legs out. And I'm going to offer you one more exercise. That's my favorite one. I teach it in almost every class. I think it's so good for our hips once we really get it. And this is kind of by request. So many of my students ask for this because they want to practice it at home. So you can absolutely do this on the floor. You can do this in bed. We're going to start with the knees bent and the feet very wide. This is windshield wiper, but in my experience, there are several variations of windshield wiper. So the first won't be huge. It's going to be a very small motion. My knees are very wide. I'm not sure if you can really get a sense of this, but they're wider than the width of my whole body. My feet are also very wide. I'm going to rest my hands at the front of the pelvis. And this is a throwback to what we did standing. So I'm going to see, can I turn my legs without letting my pelvis turn? And I can't move them a lot. I'm trying to be really conscientious of when I turn to my left side, for example. My left thigh is turning out, my right thigh is turning in, and I'm even giving the slightest pressure to my right side of my right pelvis so that it doesn't come up off of the floor. Right? We're not doing that variation yet. It's just leg turning in socket. Okay, I'll give you all sorts of ways to improve this. So breath. You can inhale to come up. Exhale to the side. And again, let it be small. Let it be precise. It's leg in hip socket more than turning your back. Inhale up. Exhale to turn. Now, another piece you might be able to feel is, again, the navel. So if I'm turning to my right side, I might imagine that my navel in some way is countering and drawing to the left. That really helps if I exhale. And then I can inhale to come back to center. Again, if that feels like one level too complicated for right now, that's okay, skip it. But you might be able to feel, wow, my navel kind of is countering the direction my legs are turning. This is going to involve a little bit more kind of nice abdominal activity. As long as you're really breathing out, breathing in and breathing out. You also might notice that I'm really on my heels. That works better for me. I've seen people who can do this just with their feet on the ground. For me, I can't get a lot of movement. So you're welcome to be on heels like me. So that's kind of step one. And if you find that this is starting to really free and get some nice warming to your hip, stay with this. Right. Next variation would be to let everything move. So now when you go to the side, you can let your legs turn, let your pelvis turn. Again, you might turn on exhale and turn back in on inhale. You would turn out on exhale and come back up on inhale. Now, if your whole body were to tip to the side, that would put a lot of strain on your mid-back and lower back. Okay? So what you can do is let your arms relax out to kind of a T, and as you turn to your side, let your pelvis move, but you might think to yourself the back of the upper ribs as though they are aiming for the floor. Okay. Coming back up. So if I'm turning to my left, I'm thinking back of the right ribs, aiming toward the floor. I'll give you one more variation. Of course, you might think back of ribs. Okay, now you're welcome to stay with that. So now we have 2 variations. The next piece is going to start to activate some of the muscles of the outer thigh. So for this 2, I'm going to turn this direction for the first round, and then I'll show you from the side. So it starts the same way. I'm going to come to my side. Now at this point, I'm turning to my right. I'm going to imagine my right leg like it's just asleep, right? And I'm going to let my left leg turn up and out. And for me, I have to move my foot around a little bit. But I'm trying to sense the moment that now my left leg, as it moves left, it's giving kind of a pull or like a reeling to the right leg. Then I turn to the left. Now it reverses. Now my left leg is going to be kind of asleep. And I'm going to turn my right leg up, 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 and out. And I'm going to imagine the right leg turning is going to reel the left leg over. And we'll do that a couple times. So you're turning to one side and then letting the top leg lead. So it's coming up and out, and feel free to move your foot around. And when you get really practiced with this, and I'm telling myself this as well, you can maybe do this and stay relaxed through your shoulders the whole time. I think it's possible. I think those people exist. So we have a lot going on. We have a leg moving, the other leg, this really nice rotation through the hip socket. And for those of you who have hip replacements, unless you've been told otherwise, this is a great variation, and this is a great movement to get those outer hip muscles turning on. But also with this variation, you're probably moving a bit slower than the first couple. So as far as breathing goes, just breathe. Make sure that breath is coming in and out, possibly at a different rhythm than the movement. That's okay. Let's take one more round. Any of these variations, you're welcome to continue. You'll start to notice that they get freer and freer the more you do them. If this were a practice you were doing in bed, great, you're ready to go to sleep, right? Or you're ready to wake up. So if you just did that in the morning, you're ready to roll to your side and press the bed away or press the floor away to come up. And it might be interesting to then stand. So again, if you're in a bed and you're going to sleep, good night, enjoy. If you'd like, you can come up to a standing position. You can bring a foot forward so your back is as it will be standing. You might be hanging onto a chair, that's fine. But notice the difference and the feel of your hips and your low back. I'm feeling very kind of buoyant and lifted, sort of ready to take a nice walk, ready to get on with the day. And let's bring our palms together and take a few seconds again just to sense and notice the shift you feel in your body, in your pace, maybe in your breathing. Thank you guys so much for trying this and for practicing at home. Great work. If you'd like to continue on and do another video, any of them would be great after this if you're going ahead with your day or your night. Enjoy. Namaste.